Yo, what's up guys, Alf here, and today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth deck breakdown of a deck that I recently used to get back into the top 20 with on the arena ladder. As you can see from the screenshot here, I'm currently 48 and 14 with this list, and honestly a pretty big portion of those losses were misplays on my part as I was trying to figure the deck out, so the list itself has felt incredibly good to me so far. And now before I get into it, there's going to be an importable deck list down in the description if you want to try the list out for yourself, and if you're an MTGAzone Premium member, I'm in the middle of writing a full in-depth deck guide article for this deck that'll have a bunch more details, a full sideboard guide, how I change the deck for best of one, and some tips and tricks to help you play the deck as well. So as soon as that's finished and up, I'll have a link to that down in the description as well. But anyway, with that all out of the way, this is my Naya Val Convoke combo deck in Historic. So we recently got the new alchemy set with this new card Val Marine Surveyor, and it combos incredibly well with Trelasara, because if you can get both of these creatures out, and then you can trigger either of them, either by gaining life, or discovering, investigating, scrying, surveilling, or seeking, then you get infinite life gain, infinite scry, and infinite damage, which is incredibly strong, because this is essentially a 2-card combo as long as you have a way to trigger it, right? We've seen 3-card combos be playable in the past, but because there's such a big variety of generically good cards that can trigger either of these, it honestly feels like a 2-card combo in a lot of situations, as long as you have a big enough density of ways to trigger the combo, if that makes sense. And because of that, there are a big variety of ways that you can build the deck, and I tried a pretty big variety of ways. You know, I tried more all-in builds where you have, you know, some interaction and protection spells, and then you're very all-in on trying to find the combo, but the issue with those is that you're incredibly vulnerable to interactive heavy decks, especially Thoughtseizing to Surgical, right? I just wasn't comfortable running any build where your deck just becomes a bunch of dorky creatures and protection spells if the opponent leads on Thoughtseizing to Surgical. Also, I didn't really feel like there were good enough ways to assemble the combo consistently, right? Obviously, any deck can run Green Sun Zenith, which can find both pieces, but the next best alternative is Chord of Calling, and if you're running a deck with a bunch of non-creatures in, whether that is protection spells or interaction, Chord of Calling is very difficult to make good early on, consistently at the very least. And then I also tried builds that were kind of encapsulating more of a plan B. I tried builds with Birthing Ritual and Goblin Bombardment alongside cards like Goblin Trap Finder and the White Gnome that gains you life when it dies, so that then if you sacrifice either of those with one of these in play during your end step to Birthing Ritual, if you then find the other combo piece, you can then trigger the combo, because you can order the triggers in such a way where you'll seek or gain life after the combo piece has been put into play, which was very interesting, but I just felt like those builds weren't particularly good at finding the combo quickly, which I think is one of the biggest advantages of running the Val combo. And I also felt like you're kind of getting the worst of both worlds, really. Trelasara and Val don't really synergize particularly well with Birthing Ritual, Goblin Bombardment as a deck. And then on the flip side, you're, you know, running the bare minimum Bombardment Ajani cards, so the fair game plan of the deck isn't as strong as it is in Boros Energy or Mardu, for example. So that didn't feel particularly great. But this build here has felt incredibly strong, not only because it has more turn 3 kills than any other build I've seen, which I'll go over in a second, but it also has a very solid plan B, so if the opponent does Thoughtseize and Surgical you, they've kind of wasted their cards in a lot of ways, because you can just rely on a go wide beatdown game plan. You have alternate win conditions and board control that you can search off Chord and Green Sun Zenith like Grist, for example. And the plan B of the deck is very good at finding the plan A of the deck as well, through cards like Chord of Calling and Knight Errant Vios as well. So this build has felt really, really good to me. Definitely the best out of the builds I've tried so far. So, like I said, this variant has more turn 3 kills than any other build I've seen. So I'm going to try and go through as many of them as I can quickly now. So you can go Guide of Souls on turn 1, into Trell or Val on turn 2, into the other one on turn 3, or you can go Guide into one of them into Green Sun Zenith for the other one on turn 3, or you can go Guide into one of them into Chord of Calling for the other on turn 3. Then you've got all of those, but you replace Guide of Souls with Warden. The Chord of Calling line isn't viable with Warden because you need 3 untapped creatures or artifacts in play, but in that instance, you could Chord of Calling for Rubble Belt Maverick instead. Speaking of which, there are some Rubble Belt Maverick lines where you can go, for example, Gilded Goose on turn 1, into Trell of Val on turn 2, into the other one on turn 3, into Green Sun for X equals 1, and then, like I said, if you've got Warden into one of them, into the other, you can Chord of Calling for Rubble Belt on turn 2 as well, on turn 3, and then you've got a variety of Rope Line into Chord of Calling lines. So this particular variant, because we have both Guide of Souls and Warden and Maverick that we can tutor for, has such a big variety of turn 3 kills that if the opponent has a deck without interaction in the first few turns, which isn't uncommon right now when Eldrazi's everywhere, and they're not always going to have, you know, Utopia Sprawl into Eldrazi Temple to have Kozilek's Command up, for example, you're just presenting turn 3 kills very, very consistently. And like I said, there are a lot of decks that don't have good interaction early on, and because you have a good backup plan as well, even if they do have interaction, it's not the end of the world. Then in terms of the specific cards in this deck, first of all, we've got Guide of Souls, which is obviously one of the best enablers for Trelasara or Val, because once it's in play, you know, you can just trigger it by getting the second piece, which makes Chord of Calling lines a lot easier. But outside of that, the plan B of this deck is sort of like a go wide Convoke game plan, and Guide of Souls works incredibly well with that, especially alongside Ropeline Attendant. Getting a bunch of tokens into play very easily gets the amount of energy that we've got up, so we can start triggering Guide of Souls to attack in, you know, force pressure through, which is particularly good because a lot of decks will bring in either single target removal or discard spells against you to try and stop the combo itself. And if they're working very hard to stop the combo, you can oftentimes just win off the back of Guide of Souls and going wide, which is really strong. Then Warden of the Inner Sky, another very easy way for us to trigger Trelasara and Val. But like I said, we're very good at getting multiple tokens into play, and Warden just works generically well in part of the Convoke game plan, not only to grow itself and eventually present a flying and vigilance threat, but also to help you scry towards your combo cards, get rid of lands if you don't need them. The repeated scry of this is very good. And then obviously when we've got cards like Gilded Goose that can get multiple permanents into play, you can more easily trigger this on turn 2 or just early on in general. Then speaking of which, Gilded Goose, obviously not as efficient at ramping in general compared to alternatives like Birds of Paradise, but the fact that this can produce food tokens is incredibly good because it gives us a way to gain life to trigger Trelasara or Val. So even though this is obviously a little bit slower than Warden or Guide of Souls because you need 2 spare mana to gain life, it is incredibly useful as just a way, you know, another alternative way to trigger it. And the really nice thing about both Gilded Goose and Warden of the Inner Sky is they give us a way to trigger the combo that allows us to win through Enter the Battlefield hate like Hushbringer or Torpor, which is very commonly played right now. I've seen Boros with main deck Hushbringer, Seymour play recently, and obviously a lot of the Eldrazi lists are running Torpor, some in the main deck, but a lot of them are running it in the 75 as well. So having 2 ways to win through that is very effective. And then another really nice thing about Gilded Goose with the food tokens is it gives us a way to be able to win at instant speed as well. So say, for example, if you have a Warden of the Inner Sky and a food in play off Gilded Goose, you can activate the Warden of the Inner Sky at sorcery speed. And then if the opponent tries to kill one of your combo pieces, you can then just crack the food in response to that to force the opponent to have another removal spell. Not to mention it's a good mana sink and a good source of life gain as well. Then obviously we've got Green Sun Zenith here, which incredibly good because it can find both Trelasara or Val, but it can also find Rumblebelt Maverick if we have both of these and we don't have a way to trigger the combo. It can help find Gilded Goose if we need mana or life gain, and it can also help us find Grist as just a generic good option if we don't have anything or we need, you know, we need to kill a creature. And because we have so many tokens and small creatures, we can very consistently play this and activate the -2 the turn it comes down, which is really nice. And just, you know, just having a generic option to kill creatures of any size in the main deck that we can tutor for is incredibly good. Then Rumblebelt Maverick, as I've said, this is basically just here as a tutorable card to trigger the combo if we don't have anything else. And the fact it's 1 mana is so nice because it means that we can get it into play off, you know, for 2 mana off Zenith, or just Chord for 1 early on, which, you know, there are multiple lines where we can get this down on turn 3 after getting the combo pieces in, which is really nice. Then Ropeline Attendant is just one of the most generically powerful cards in the deck. There's so many busted starts enabled by this card, particularly with Chord of Calling and Knight Errant, right? Oftentimes, if I do have Chord or Knight Errant in my hand, I actually won't play my 1-drops on turn 2, because if you hold them into your hand and then you play Ropeline Attendant, all of your 1-drops effectively ramp into Chord of Calling because you're getting 2 creatures into play off just a single mana, which helps you get into these early on, which is really huge. Then speaking of which, Chord of Calling, you know, not only finds all of your combo pieces, but can also find, you know, your Guide of Souls and your Warden, which Green Sun Zenith can't find, which is really nice. And then we have a variety of cards in the sideboard that this can get. And then the fact that this can be used at instant speed makes it much more difficult for the opponent to play around stuff. You know, similar to how I said with Gilded Goose, we can often have the combo in play, activate, you know, a food token to try and trigger it, and then if the opponent does have a removal spell, we can then call it in response to Rumblebelt as another way to get the combo going. Again, we can tutor for Grist as well, which is another really nice option. So Chord, not only great at helping us find the combo more consistently, but this deck is just so good at enabling it early on because we have a bunch of cheap creatures and we have Ropeline as well. And then we have another Convoke payoff in Knight Errant of Eos, which is just a decently sized body. I have won a lot of games just getting this into play, you know, early on, especially alongside a Guide of Souls and just beating down, which means if the opponent is super focused on trying to take down the combo, you have a good beatdown game plan. But in general, this card is just great at helping assemble the combo as well. It's another way that we can keep ropeline hands, just increasing your range of keepable hands so that you can keep ropeline plus one of your combo pieces, and the Knight Errant has a pretty good chance of finding another one, or finding a Warden that helps us scry for it, for example. So Knight Errant, just generically good card that is great at finding your combo pieces. And like I said, if one of your pieces does get extracted, you can just try and find Guide of Souls or Warden to try and go over the top of the opponent. Then in terms of the mana base, we've got 22 lands, which just felt like a good amount. By mistake, I was running 20 in the first few builds, and I actually ended up losing quite a few to Mana Screw. So having tweaked it, 22 lands has felt like a solid amount to me here. Obviously, we need to ensure that the mana base can consistently cast all of our colours, which we need. And then I also like running Mana Confidence and Starting Town, not only to enable that, but also so that we can sometimes hardcast Grist if we end up drawing it occasionally, which is nice to have access to. I also really like running White Orchid Phantom in the sideboard for the Eldrazi matchup. I do feel like that's generally a favoured matchup because you have turn 3 kills, but like I said, especially if you're on the draw and the opponent has a very strong start, they can have Kozilek's Command up, and then that'll help them draw into another one, which can keep them interacting with your board to enable them to go over the top of you. So whilst Eldrazi is such a popular matchup, I definitely feel like it's worth running White Orchid Phantom in this sideboard just to, ensure that you don't get high rolled. So what I'll usually do is board out the rope lines and board in the White Orchid Phantoms, and the mana base is here to support that as well. As you'll see in some of the gameplay, I was running a single Witch Enchanter in place of one of the basic planes so that we have a main deck tutorable way to remove artifacts and enchantments, but the only way that you're setting that up is with X equals 4 of Chord of Calling, which basically never happens. And the other reason I like Witch Enchanter as well is that it does get the buff off Ropeline Attendant, so if you have it in your hand and you play it as a land, you still get a 1/1 token, which is really, really useful for your Convoke effects, but I didn't really feel like that was coming up often enough as a one-of. I was never tutoring it with Chord of Calling, and I did end up losing games to both Wizards and Goblin Bombardment decks taking the 3 damage off putting it into play. Not to mention, I have seen a number of decks running, White Orchid Phantom or Field of Ruin effects in multiples to target Eldrazi, which also is incidentally good against you if you're not running at least 2 basics. So I felt like running 2 basics was a good hedge against that as well. I do want to quickly address why I'm not running any Scry lands. I think Forsaken Crossroads is a particularly good land in Val Trelisara, and the main reason for that is just that we have more than enough enablers to get the combo going, that it doesn't feel worth it, especially in this particular build, because with a Convoke deck, you really, really need all of your lands entering untapped in the first few turns, because you oftentimes need to get multiple 1-drops into play to be able to curve out into Chord of Calling and Knight Errant of Eos. So you just can't afford to run any lands that are going to be entering tapped in the first few turns, if that makes sense. So next up, we'll have a look at the sideboard, starting off with the one of tutor targets that we can get off Zenith or Chord. And Insidious Fungus is mainly here for the Eldrazi matchup as a tutorable card that can remove Torpor Orb that doesn't rely on an enter the battlefield trigger, and it can also remove Chalice, which is very important if they name either X equals 1 or X equals 2. As you'll see from the gameplay, I originally had Outland Liberator in this slot because I felt like it was better off Chord of Calling, because if you have 5 creatures into play, you can chord for Liberator and you only need 1 actual mana to remove the Torpor Orb or whatever the artifact or enchantment is. However, I realised that the main matchup I want this for, which is Eldrazi, I was actually trimming Chord of Calling because I was replacing Ropeline Attendant with White Orchid Phantom, which makes Chord worse. So because of that, I felt like Insidious Fungus was better because it's better off Zenith, which is the more common card we'll have in the matchup as we're trimming Chord, because it just enables us to spread the cost over multiple turns, right? If the Eldrazi opponent goes Chalice of the Void for X equals 1 on turn 2, then on your turn 2 you can go Zenith for 1 for Fungus and then activate it the following turn, which you can't do with Liberator. Then Sylvan Safekeeper is really nice as a tutorable card to protect your combo, because it can protect, your Trelisara or Val from spot removal. It's also just nice to get off Zenith for X equals 1 because it can protect itself and then the combo pieces if you've got them in your hand. So very nice against spot removal decks. Then we've got Remorseful Cleric, which is just tutorable Graveyard Hate off Chord of Calling. Not too much to talk about there, really. Thalia is very nice against both Lotus Field combo or just, non-creature storm combos in general. And it's also really nice against, control decks, especially decks running sweepers as well. Crawl Harpooner is here specifically for Is It Wizards, which is kind of a funny one because until very recently Wizards was basically non-existent, but now that they've unearthed the Chorus package, Wizards is seeing more play, and it's a very difficult matchup for this deck as well because they pair a fast clock with a bunch of interactions, so they're good at stopping your fastest starts and then applying pressure. So if we can remove the fast clock, then we can play through their interaction fairly easily. So having Crawl Harpooner is a way that we can cleanly kill their Symmetry Sages and Slickshot show-offs while still having a blocker with reach back to try and trade with another creature is really big. Now, typically, I do think there are better cards against Wizards, but the fact that we can tutor for this very early on off both Chord of Calling and Zenith makes it feel like the better card to me in general. So I feel like while the Chorus package has been unnerfed, Wizards are going to see more play, and since Wizards is such a tricky matchup for this deck, it's worth running a very narrow card in the sideboard, in my opinion. And we've got Aven Interrupter, which is basically a tutorable counterspell in a lot of ways. So this is very useful against decks running sweepers because, you know, sometimes you will have hands where you keep just a go-wide Convoke hand with Ropeline Attendant, and being able to chord for Aven Interrupter to stop a counterspell oftentimes just allows you to force lethal through the next turn. Plus, it's also very useful against more fringe combo decks that rely on a single card to be able to go off, like a Goblin Charbelcher or an Indomitable Creativity, for example. Then we've also got Skyclave Apparition, which is just more creature removal in addition to Grist, and also helps us remove smaller permanents as well. Like I said, we do already have Grist that does a very similar thing, but the key difference here is that this removes the creature at instant speed of Chord of Calling, which is absolutely huge, especially against decks like Auras. And then finally, the last two cards in the sideboard are Path to Exile and White Orchid Phantom. Path to Exile is actually a very recent swap for me. I was originally running Fragment Reality in this slot, but I realised the only two matchups where I'm bringing Fragment Reality in were against Auras and Wizards, and the big issue with Fragment in both of those matchups is that they're pretty bad against their 2-drops, which in all honesty is the main things you want to be removing, especially against Auras. So I ended up swapping out for Path to Exile. Now obviously using this early on and giving them a land is a little bit awkward, but I just feel like it's so much more important against both of those matchups to just keep them off creatures entirely that Fragment Reality really isn't the right answer, and Path to Exile is better specifically for what we want out of this card, if that makes sense. And then finally, kind of gone over it a little bit, but White Orchid Phantom, I do feel like the Eldrazi matchup is favoured, but their high rolls, their fast starts, especially when you're on the draw, can be tricky if they have Kozilek's Command in multiples early on. So having White Orchid Phantom as just a way to disrupt the top end of their curve is really effective. I felt like I was occasionally losing to Eldrazi before the Phantom, and after I made the swap, the matchup feels very, very favoured to me. So that's the deck overall, and like I said, I feel like this particular build really fixes a lot of issues that I was having with other builds of the deck, and I also feel like it should be relatively flexible to metagame changes as well, because you can very consistently tutor sideboard silver bullets with your Zenith and your Chord of Calling as well. So next up I've got gameplay so you guys can see the deck in action. The first match I'm going to show is with a slightly older build of the deck where I was accidentally running 20 lands, so don't copy the list for that, but it's basically the same core with, you know, maybe a few cards difference, but I wanted to include that match just because it really highlights how broken some of the Ropeline Attendant starts can be. The rest of the matches I'm going to show are going to be basically this exact list, maybe a few different sideboard cards. I also want to say that I've got a bunch of extra gameplay video already recorded with this deck, so if you're interested, I'm tempted to put out extra gameplay video in the next few days of this deck, because I don't like to put out deck guide videos unless I'm really happy with the deck, and that takes a lot of time. You know, oftentimes I end up ditching decks that aren't good enough, and oftentimes it can take me weeks to come up with a build that I'm finally happy with. So to keep the uploads more regular, I am tempted to upload more additional gameplay for the deck guides that I've already put out. So if you're interested in that, definitely let me know. Some of the gameplay that I've recorded will be with slightly, you know, previous versions of this deck where, you know, we've got slightly different sideboard cards or slightly different main deck cards. But if you're just interested in more, you know, gameplay of the core of this deck, definitely let me know, and I'll be willing to put out another video in the next few days. Either way, let me know in the comments if you've got any questions or comments about the deck at all. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Big up. Okay, so we're on the play here. And wow, yeah, this hand is great. Now, a lot of the time with Ropeline Attendant into either Knight Errant or Chord of Calling hands, I'll oftentimes not play a 1-drop on turn 1, because if you hold it to give it the buff with Ropeline, it kind of works as a ramp spell for your Convoke cards, because you're paying 1 mana and getting 2 creatures. But with this hand, because we have Gilded Goose, if it survives, we can go Ropeline into Warden, which allows us to get to Knight Errant even faster. Okay, opponent has a removal spell for the Gilded Goose, but that's not too much of an issue, right? We can just lead on Ropeline here. Wow, 3rd Ropeline. I mean, I'm not even sure if we'll cast that, to be honest. I mean, it depends if we draw a land here, I think, but yeah, I mean, this is going to be a very strong start, even if we don't find the combo here. So next turn, I mean, drawing a land would be huge, because that would enable us to go Ropeline into Warden into Knight Errant, all of which producing 2 tokens, basically. If we don't draw land, we can just go Rope Line anyway. Okay, we do draw land. That's huge. So now we can go Rope Line, buff our hand again. Warden produces 2 tokens. Knight Errant produces 2 tokens. So even if we don't find the combo here, looks like we're against Energy. I find it very hard to believe that they'll be able to beat our start here, even with their, even if they have a bombardment next turn. So we go Knight Errant, get 2 tokens, and okay, we don't find any of the combo pieces, but we do find 2 Guide of Souls. So we could either go Guide of Souls into Rope Line, or Rope Line buff the Guide of Souls into Guide of Souls, and then start giving our board, flying to get over the top if they do, get a creature and bombardment into play, which might make it difficult to attack down the Ajani. Now with Guide of Souls, we can start potentially buffing and giving our Knight Errant Evios flying. Wow, they do have Raptor into bombardment, so I mean that is arguably one of the best starts they could hope for, and it's still probably not even going to be close to enough in this instance. I mean, again, multiple Rope Line starts aren't always going to happen, especially because they're only really powerful if you have a Convoke payoff as well, but this just kind of shows that we haven't found either piece of the combo here, and we should still be winning pretty easily, I think. So the Ajani, I mean, it doesn't really matter what they hit with the 2 here. We should just be good to attack down the Ajani. Okay, now we found a land, so we can go Rope Line into Guide of Souls, which I think is probably the best line here, I'd imagine, because it gives us, more tokens, more cards that we can use with the Warden, which is another creature that we can give flying, even if we can't get the Guide of Souls online this turn. So yeah, I mean, I think we should be good. Unless they're running a sweeper in the main, which I would be very surprised about in Energy. I think we should just be good here, right? Yeah, okay, opponent just scoops it up. So that obviously felt crazy good. So against Energy, I mean, Skyclave Apparition is probably worth bringing in. The main card we're really worried about here is Goblin Bombardment, because if they do get a fast start down, they can obviously kill our creatures at instant speed. They can take out Treadasara to stop the combo, but like I said, like you saw in game 1 there, we have multiple ways to be able to beat that. We have Apparition to take out the bombardment now as well. And like I said, we have a variety of ways to get off to really fast starts, especially turn 3 combo kills. So, if they're relying on sorcery speed removal like Static Prison, and they don't find bombardment, it's going to be very difficult for them to stop the combo as well. Now, I do imagine they've probably brought in extra instant speed spot removal against us, but as we saw last game, the other half of the deck, Super Go Wide, doesn't really care that much about spot removal, so it kind of leaves them in a tough spot where if they bring in a bunch of spot removal against us, they're really going to struggle if we open with Rope Line. So, just makes the deck a little bit more resilient, especially post-sideboard. So being on the draw here is going to be more tough, right? I think a big reason why we weren't able to get so far ahead that last game was because we were on the play, right? If the opponent gets down a Ajani bombardment a turn sooner, things are very different, but I still feel like from what I've played so far, this has felt like a good matchup for us. Okay, so we don't have red. We obviously do have red off the Gilded Goose here, but I think we've got to keep this hand, right? We've got a bunch of 1-drops and Knight Errant. We got Guide of Souls and Warden as well, which can help us, start going over the top of the opponent or digging towards the combo. Okay, interesting. So we do have Val now, which is really nice to have access to. Trying to think if it's worth playing the Val ahead of the 1-drops here, so that when we Knight Errant, if we do find a Treadasara, then we can combo off the following turn, right? I think there's a good argument here to going Guide of Souls into Val, but I could also see the argument of getting double Warden down, get the energy and the life gain going, and then makes it basically guaranteed that we'll be able to Knight Errant the following turn. And I think I will go for that, actually. Especially now, I've seen Arabella. They look like they're going to be on a very aggressive build, so just getting onto the board, slowing down their offensive is going to be pretty good. And then next turn we can still go Val and Knight Errant, which is really nice. Then we can gain life, potentially find Treadasara to go off the following turn. Unfortunately, we don't have quite enough mana to do both this turn, but, I still think we're in a very good spot. I mean, Boros Energy in particular really relies on getting on the board early to apply pressure, and now we have a source of life gain as well. I think it's going to be very difficult for them. Okay, so Static Prison, so we lose the source of life gain, but, we still have a way to combo off with the Wardens here, so... So they attack in, we'll obviously block, and I mean, I think this turn kind of plays itself, right? We just go Val into Knight Errant, hopefully find a Trelisara, and then if they don't have a spot removal for either piece, then we should just be good to go off. Okay, found Trelisara, so now the opponent needs removal, basically. And even if they don't find removal, we're still in a pretty good spot here. We can start using the Wardens to scry towards the other piece. They can't really attack through because of the Knight Errant here. I mean, I guess if they can get multiple creatures down and they start, giving the Arabella flying, that could be a little bit tricky. But we've still got Goose as a blocker in the air if we need. We've still got Goose as a source of life gain if we need. And obviously, scrying with Warden will start getting life gain off Val as well. Wow, they don't have a piece of removal, so we just win here then, right? We can just go Warden into Trelisara, scry off one of the Wardens, and that should be it. I still like scrying. I mean, just on the off chance the opponent has something I'm not thinking of, but they don't have any mana, so I'm, just top here. And it's always worth just pressing spacebar to get through this quickly. I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? Even if you time out, you're guaranteed to win because it's just an infinite loop. So yeah, we got there. That felt really good. Okay, so we're on the play here. And yeah, I think we can keep this one. It's a little bit awkward that we don't have that many creatures for rope line, and we don't have an enabler to combo off yet here, but we've got a lot of potentially good draws. Right, rope line does make Chord of Calling a little bit better as well. Oh, wow, okay. Worst possible draw there, but we can still go rope line into Trelisara, into Chord, and then, into Zenith for the combo, right? We can Zenith or Chord for X equals 1 to get Revolt Maverick. Overlord. So looks like maybe Reanimator if I had to guess, but it's kind of weird. That's usually Esper. I wonder why they've got a green splash here, and it looks like they've got, a pretty. Okay, Val off the top is nice, but yeah, I was saying that it looks like they've got a pretty heavy green splash here to see 2 lands already. But either way, we can go Trelisara here, and then we can just Chord for X equals 1 to get a Guide of Souls or a Warden, and then just go for Val next turn. I think Guide of Souls is probably better because it's the more generically powerful card, and it also enables us to potentially win off both Zenith and Chord if we need them both in the same turn. They thought seize, but we can Chord in response to go for Guide of Souls here. And then, no matter what they take, we should still combo off here as long as they don't have another discard spell. Or I guess they could also have like a Fatal Push as well. But, we're forcing them to have double Thoughtseize or Thoughtseize plus a removal spell here. Okay, they take the Val. I mean, that's probably the wrong pick because Zenith can find Val and another creature. But I guess if the opponent doesn't have a removal spell here... Oh, they're on death. Okay, so they're on Reanimate. But yeah, if the opponent doesn't have another discard spell here, then their best chance of winning is probably hoping that I mess up and use the Zenith for something else. But, we'll just Zenith here for Val, and that should be it, right? So again, the scrying doesn't really matter, but I kind of like seeing the order of the cards, and... if the opponent has mana open especially, I have had a couple of instances where the opponent doesn't realise what the combo is and they let it loop a few times before killing your creature. So then, in those instances, it's definitely worth trying to scry there. So we definitely want Remorseful Cleric here because it looks like they're on, more heavy Reanimator plan, and there are a number of creatures like, Atraxa, Gristlebrand, Saint Elender if they're still running that, although I doubt it, but... them getting them down on turn 3 would be tricky. Now, we didn't see any red mana, so I'm just trying to think of the right cut here, because I don't want to trim Grist in case they get a big creature in play, although maybe that is the right play. Maybe we're only supposed to tutor for Remorseful Cleric to stop them, but I guess, again, if we draw our tutor effect after they've already reanimated, like a Serra's Emissary or something, I don't know what reanimation targets they're running, then having Grist as an out is nice. But yeah, we didn't see red from them, so I don't think we need to worry about death or persist on turn 2. But it wouldn't surprise me Okay, we've got both combo pieces and cord. We have to keep this one, right? Oh, wow. And Guide of Souls off the top. I mean, this is the nice thing. We have so much redundancy for the combo here. And I think I'm going to just withhold information. I don't just want to run out the Guide of Souls when they can potentially kill it, especially when they had mana open there. So I think I'm going to lead on the Trelisara here and just hope they tap out, because they have a lot of good turn 3 tap out plays, whether that's Diviner of Fates, whether that's Overlord. That I'm hoping they'll just tap out here, and then we can just go Guide of Souls and Val. And the other reason I went for Trelisara here is it hides information. Okay, sick. So the opponent, as far as they're aware, I don't have red mana for Val, and I don't have an enabler for the combo. So that's I tried to sequence it to try and bait the opponent into tapping out as much as I possibly could here, basically. Now they are tapped out. We can just go for Val. Yeah, so opponent's on Ulamog, so it looks like they're probably on both Death and Emperor of Bones, if I had to guess. Which is a pretty powerful package for sure, but it does leave them lighter on interaction, which does make them very soft to combo decks like this. So again, I mean, it doesn't really matter about the scries, right? And if you do want this to just, go through as quickly as possible, you can just mash spacebar to just scry to the top as quickly as possible. But again, I mean, it doesn't really matter if you time out, because it's, it's an infinite loop, but... Okay, looks like opponent's just roping here, maybe. So I'll edit it out if they do. Okay, no, they're back. Maybe they just disconnected or tabbed out or something. Oh, okay, maybe not. I mean, they're pretty close to the end of the rope anyway, so shouldn't take too much longer, I don't think. And thankfully, this is a nice combo where you don't have to worry about time pressure, right? I mean, it is annoying having to mash spacebar a million times, but even if you do time out, it's just an indefinite, infinite combo. Do be aware, though, I did accidentally combo off against someone who had protection from the One Ring, and I ended up having to alt tab out the game and then end up losing it. So don't do it if the opponent has protection, but yeah, don't have to worry about timing, thankfully. Okay, so we're on the play here. And wow, if one of these lands was green, this would be a keep for sure, but can't keep that one, unfortunately. Oh, wow. Okay, this hand is not keepable either. So we'll go down to 5, and... I mean, I think we just got to put a land and a grist back. Typically, I'm happy to keep 2 land hands with this deck, but with this hand specifically, we really need the 3rd land here to ensure that we can cord on turn 3. Wow, another land, not all we want to see. So this is tricky. I mean, it depends what we draw here. The next draw stuff is going to be crucial. If we draw another land, I think our best hope is to just try and cord for 1 and then try and draw, for either Guide of Souls or Warden, and then try and draw... Oh, wow. Yeah, try and draw a Trelisara or another cord or Zenith off the top. Like, even with this terrible draw, we still have, like... a bunch of top decks that just instantly win us the game as long as the opponent doesn't have spot removal here. So they have Felia. Do they also have Overlord? Wow, Sorin. Are they on Vein Ripper? I mean, to be fair, Vein Ripper is actually not that poorly positioned right now. Vein Ripper is actually not that bad against the current metagame because... it's good against Bombardment, and it's also good against Kozilek's Command, right? Because if they sacrifice the creatures to pay for mana, Vein Ripper deals them a ton of damage. Okay, so they attack, presumably they blink the Vow. So I was thinking Guide of Souls is generally the better card out of that and Warden from a generic sense, especially because it opens up Chord of Calling as a win condition. So going to go for that now, and that means that we get an extra Guide of Souls trigger when it phases back in during the end step. So now we just want to find Trelisara. Oh, okay, I was going to say Zenith or Cord. But that's the nice thing about this deck. You have so much redundancy for everything that this hand looked pretty hopeless, and we still managed to win. I mean, again, it relied on the opponent not having spot removal, but that's a good thing. A lot of decks right now don't have a ton of spot removal, because the format is so linear, right? Eldrazi and Energy kind of have a chokehold on the fair decks, and then, the rest of the format I feel like it's probably just going to be trying to do combo stuff for the most part, which doesn't leave that much room for interaction. So, okay, sweet. So managed to steal game 1 on a Malta 5 that looked pretty dicey. So this... I mean, I'm not really sure we want to sideboard too heavily. We didn't see anything that we'd need Apparition for, I don't think. But, you know, they're a Sorin deck. They look like they're a mid-range deck. I mean, if they're running Felia, they're probably running Overlord, which means they're probably running a lot of creatures and hopefully not that much interaction. But I still feel like the main way that they're beating us is with spot removal into their proactive game plans. So I'll bring in the Safekeeper as a one-off here, and then, you know, if we need to defend our creatures, we can chord for it instant speed, or we can preemptively Zenith for it. So I feel like it's worth it as a one-off for sure. So they are going to be a Thoughtseize deck, and it wouldn't surprise me if they've brought in more discard effects. They probably run Peddler as well. Oh, well, I was going to say, so I'm going to try not to mulligan at all if I can, but, you know, that hand, the mana just didn't support it. So this hand looks better, though, and I think we can put back a land. We don't really want double confidence because it's going to deal us a ton of damage here. Okay, no Thoughtseize is great to see. Now we can go Guide of Souls, and now we have Warden for Trelosaurus. So we have a turn 3 kill here, but that's assuming no interaction, and I assume they do have interaction, right? Of some sort. Although again, they must be on a creature heavy deck to be on Overlord, so okay, no, there is the Thoughtseize. But it's pretty tricky, like what do they take here? Presumably they have to take one of the two combo pieces, but then Knight Errant can help find another copy of it, right? Ooh, okay, Ropeline's sick as well. So now we can go Ropeline into Warden, and then next time we can go Trelosaurus into Knight Errant. And I mean, I am a little bit worried about Toxic Deluge, because that is a very efficient way that they can just take out our whole board here, but even if they do that this turn, we still have Trelosaurus into Knight Errant, so I'm going to scry away anything that isn't a land or a Val or a way to find Val here. I wouldn't mind a land on top though, because the thing I am worried about here is Toxic Deluge, or just a sweeper in general, right? And if they don't have that, then our fair game plan should be pretty good, I think. Okay, so there's Overlord. They do run Peddler. They found a Dullmaker as well, which should, you know, obviously that's going to get them onto the board, but okay, they go for Sorin, and they don't have an extra land, so they very well still could have a sweeper like a Deluge, but I still think it's worth just going for Knight Errant, because it refuels our hand, right? Even if they sweep our board, hopefully Knight Errant will give us stuff that we can recover from it with. Okay, double Guide of Souls isn't bad though, right? And then I think it's still worth scrying here. And yeah, I think I will keep a land on top. Again, I am worried about a sweeper, so at least if they do sweep, we can go Guide of Souls next turn, and then hopefully Knight Errant the following turn. Okay, there's Dullmaker. No sweeper though is absolutely huge. And now we need to consider if we want to overcommit or not, because we can't clean the attack around this Overlord very easily. Okay, they do find a Witch Enchant, so they do have the third land here. So, I mean, I think I'm just going to go for it, because between Guide of Souls and Knight Errant, we have a lot of looks at the combo here. And this is another instance where it's worth pointing out you need to ensure that you have auto-order triggered abilities not on, because you want to decide whether you want to scry before a Knight Errant or afterwards. Here we want to scry before, because we want to maximise our chance of finding Val here. Wow, okay, we don't find it, which is a little bit rough. But we do find more stuff, and again, I think, I mean, it's risky, but I feel with this Trelosaurus in play and with Guide of Souls, we can buff it to a point where if they do have Deluge, which is the only black sweeper that is able to kill big creatures that's commonly run, they're going to have to pay so much life, and they're going to have to kill their own Overlord as well. So I think we want to ensure that we can attack with the Trelosaurus here, because we want to buff it with the Guide of Souls if possible. So Trelosaurus again. Want to dig towards Val if we can find it. Okay, Ropeline, don't want that. Wow, don't find it again. So a little bit unlucky there, but at least we can buff the Trelosaurus here. Gets in for 8, and now if they Deluge, they've got to pay 8 down to 2. They kill their Overlord. And we've still got 3 creatures that we can just run out to apply pressure. One of them being Guide of Souls, which can obviously give itself flying. Okay, the fact they're attacking is a bit of a red flag. Right, I mean, they could be trying to find a combo piece or something here, but I think we're going to block here, right? Doesn't really matter losing a 1-1. And if they do have a sweeper, then we want to prevent the damage. Like, we have more than lethal in play already, so we don't need to worry about that 1-1. Wow, they did have it, okay. But they go down to 2. Ooh, and we find a rope line off the top. So do we want to run out the Guide of Souls here or not is the question. Guide of Souls, getting it out makes the... it makes the activation easier to set up, but getting Safekeeper down is better against spot removal. I'm going to... this is tricky. Because we're not guaranteed to activate the Guide of Souls next turn if we hold on to it, right? Because if we go Safekeeper, it's better against spot removal. But if we hold on to the Guide of Souls and we don't draw another creature, we go Guide of Souls, it makes a token, you get 1 energy. Then you go Gilded Goose, it gets the trigger off the goose and the token, you only have 3 energy, so you don't have a guaranteed way to activate it. So, on balance, I think it's probably better to go for the Guide of Souls just because we're guaranteed to be able to activate it next turn. And even if they do have a piece of spot removal here, we still have, 3 creatures in play, so they can't Toxic Deluge again. If they used their starting town here, they go down to 1. So, yeah, okay, sweet, we got there. Nice. Okay, so we're going second here. And yeah, this looks good. Right, we got Rope Line into Knight Errant. We've also got Green Sun Zenith if we happen to find... either of our 1-mana combo enablers. Oh, okay, like Guide of Souls. Okay, so that changes things. So I think now we go Guide of Souls on 1, Tradasara 2, Zenith 3. Hope the opponent doesn't have a piece of spot removal. And then even if they do, we can go Rope Line into Knight Errant. If we find, more redundancy, we can Zenith for the other piece as well. Okay, so pretty strong start from the opponent. And it looks like they're on Mardu. Okay, they find Fatal Push for the Guide of Souls. So that probably means I want to go Rope Line next turn instead now. Now that the turn 3 kills shut off. Okay, a bit annoying not to draw another creature there. But we can still go Rope Line here, then Tradasara, and then Knight Errant the following turn. And that does get bodies on the ground to hopefully, soak up a bit of damage. This is kind of scary the opponents on Mardu though. Yeah, because of stuff like Marionette Apprentice, they have pretty good reach. They're going to be able to close the game out. Especially because they can now buff the Guide of Souls to get in for more damage here. But again, we've got a lot of good draws again. If we can find, another Guide of Souls or a Warden here, then we can potentially just go that plus Tradasara. Oh, speaking of which, I mean, this is the big advantage of just having a ton of redundancy in the deck. We can go now Warden into Tradasara. And I don't think it's worth scrying here because that would just leave us with 1 blocker and we take a ton of damage. I think the most important thing here is that we survive this turn. And we also need at least 1 life spare for the Confluence here. Wow, okay, another Marionette Apprentice. I mean, I'm hopeful that we survive this turn. If we do, we just win, which is huge. Oh, assuming they don't have a land. Okay, yeah, they don't have a land, which is massive. Okay, going to let all that through, because obviously if we block the token, then we take an extra damage unnecessarily here. I mean, it shouldn't matter in this instance, but don't want to take unnecessary damage when we have the guaranteed win here. So now we go for Val. Now we can just use the Warden to get the combo going. Don't think it really matters which we pick here. And then just mash spacebar for a little bit. Hopefully the opponent will concede and we don't have to do it all. But again, it's nowhere near as bad as, like Traveler combo or something like that. Thankfully. So see if the opponent makes us play it out. Completely within their rights too, but doesn't really make much of a difference because it will guaranteed kill them even if I do rope and time out here. And since it is a relatively new combo, I think, some people might not be aware of it either. I never understood as well with these sorts of combos where you're scrying a lot. It happened with Scurry Oak as well. the card on top of your deck when you're scrying to the top keeps bouncing higher and higher. I have no idea why the UI does that. It's kind of weird. Okay, so this matchup we definitely want Apparition for the bombardment, and then not sure we want much else really. Like the thing with this deck is it's so synergistic and you got so much redundancy for what you're getting on. If you make widespread changes, then the consistency of the deck goes down, especially, if you cut rope line, then chord becomes worse. If you cut, there's a lot of moving pieces in the deck. So most matchups I sideboard pretty lightly, but certain matchups I do need to make drastic changes, especially against decks that demand interaction, like auras or wizards, for example. We really want Path to Exile. Against control decks, we want, stuff like Thalia and Aven Interrupter, and Green Sun Zenith becomes worth because it's sorcery speed. We also want Safekeeper in that matchup, so there I cut the Zenith for extra shooter targets and just generically good cards in the matchup as well. And then against Eldrazi, I replace Rope Line with White Orchid Phantom, and then I also like bring in Insidious Fungus and either Aven Interrupter if they're running sweepers, or Skyclave Apparition if they're on Line Breaker and Flesh Raker, and then I trim on Chord of Calling. But outside of those three specific matchups, I tend to sideboard pretty lightly against everything else because the deck's already so high synergy. And also, because we have Chord and Green Sun Zenith, we can find our sideboard Silver Bullets, which are really good in the matchup, much more consistently. So you don't really need to sideboard too much either, in my opinion. So it looks like the opponent's taking a little while to sideboard, so if it takes a while, I might just edit the rest of this out so we can get into game 2 a little bit quicker. Okay, so post-sideboard going into game 2, obviously going to be on the draw again, and I do expect them to be bringing in more interaction, but again, opponent's playing quite a high synergy deck, especially because they're in Mardu. So compared to Boros, I don't think they can afford to bring in as much interaction, which is good for us, but obviously they still have Goblin Bombardment, which can be an issue here. Okay, so this hand I think we can keep, probably. I don't really want to go too low, really. And I think we just put back our land here, right? Because we can go Goose, Val Warden, and then, if we draw a Trellisara or a Zenith or a Chord of Calling, we can just win on turn 3. If we don't, we can start using Wardens to try and scry towards those cards as well. So this is another huge thing. I just love having 4 Chord, 4 Zenith, 4 Knight Errant, 4 of the combo pieces. We've got 12 different enablers, plus all the tutor effects can find Rebel Belt as well. So yeah, it's just nice having a list. Oh, okay, that's a huge draw. But yeah, it's nice having a list where you've got redundancy for everything, and there's a lot of cross synergy between different parts of the deck as well. So now, obviously, we have Rope Line without a Convoke enabler, but Warden is a pretty nice payoff for having a lot of the extra tokens from Rope Line. Okay, so opponent's on a pretty good start here, have to say. And I think I might block here to... Actually, no, what am I doing? I was going to say to soak up unnecessary damage here, but the opponent's only got 2 cards in hand. We're just giving them more gas there. Oh, we do find Trellisara. Okay, that's pretty big. So I think we just go for Val and Warden just to get creatures on the board here. But yeah, that was a misplay on my part, because now if they find another Amped Raptor or a Jarny or... Yeah, that was a stupid thing to block there. We should just take the damage and deny them a resource, because there's so many good cards they could find off the Trap Finder. So yeah, definitely stupid misplay on my part for sure. But if the opponent doesn't have removal here, we should actually be good, right? If they don't take out the Val, even if they take out the Warden here, we can just go Warden into Trellisara next turn for the win. So we'll see what they do. Fingers crossed the card they got off the Trap Finder was just another Trap Finder or a Witness. Yeah, Marionette Apprentice. So that's going to give them 2 Guide of Souls triggers. Death triggers if they choose to attack him with everything here. So yeah, blocking the Trap Finder was just... I don't know what I was thinking there, really. I guess if they had a full hand, then I think it's fine, because we're just trying to not take unnecessary damage, really. If they've got multiple options, then it doesn't... They're probably going to prioritise the creatures that will stay in play rather than the ones that are going to stack themselves during the end step. But when they've only got 2 cards in hand, yeah, it was just stupid. Okay, thankfully, looks like they're thinking of not attacking him with everything, which is huge for us. Not that they would. It's pretty... I don't think they would be able to set up lethal regardless. So we obviously don't want to block the the cat token here because we don't want them to flip a Johnny because that would just win them the game straight away. I think we can block the Marionette Apprentice fairly freely though. Wow, Zenith off the top, so we would have had the win. I mean, if they kill Val, we don't have quite enough mana, but, you know, we would have still had the cards to be able to pull it off. So yeah, now we should just be able to win, right? We just trigger the Warden. I am going to scry here because they could have spot removal still. I mean, Arena's giving away priority, but I've had it in the past where the opponent just passes priority and then realizes they have a piece of removal. So I still like scrying if the opponent has mana open, but yeah, let's just scoop it up. So we got there, nice. Okay, so we're going second here. And, I mean, this is a turn 3 Grist, but outside of that, we got, you know, nothing. You know, we need fast starts with this deck, basically. That doesn't really get it done. This I do think we can keep, though. Right, we've got double Goose to get into the Knight Errant, and we've also got potentially turn 2 Grist here as well. Okay, Giver of Runes, so, I mean, most likely going to be Auras, but it could still be a mirror match, potentially. You know, I have seen some builds using Giver to protect the combo. Okay, Light Pause. So definitely against Auras here. So pretty rough that they have the Giver here. If they didn't have the Giver, we'd obviously just slam Grist. I mean, we could still slam Grist here, but you'd have to sacrifice... You'd have to either just plus to make a token or sacrifice the Goose to kill the Giver, which then means that we have no good way of getting out this Knight Errant. So I think, I mean, it's not ideal. I'd have loved to draw another castable creature here, but I think we just have to run out a second Goose here. And then try and find the combo of Knight Errant is the main way I can see us winning this, because Grist is good in this matchup, but if they have Giver plus a 2-drop, then it's just not enough, right? You need an extra piece of interaction, really. Okay, there's Ruckus, so... Presumably they get sheltered by Ghost, which means even if they didn't have a Giver, Grist wouldn't be good enough to take out the Light Pause here. So they do shelter by Ghost, we lose one of the Geese, which is annoying because that means that we can't even cast Knight Errant next turn now if we don't draw... Well, even if we draw another creature, it won't be enough. So I think we might be forced into Grist Plus if we don't draw anything good here. I mean, we'll see what we draw, obviously, but... Okay, Trelisara is nice, but I think we just have to go for Grist here, right? Because I want the Grist to soak up some damage if possible. And it also, if they don't attack the Grist, gives us 2 creatures to help get the Convoke online, right? So, for example, next turn we could go Trelisara, or plus then Trelisara, and then Knight Errant. Okay, they do attack down the Grist, which makes sense. But that's good because it preserves our life total slightly. And just buys us more time to try and find the combo. Okay, they have Spirit Dancer. Oh, okay, they have another Spirit Dancer. So we've got a chance here, right? If they don't draw Auras, then obviously we can just afford to take 4 damage for a couple of turns, which should hopefully buy us enough time to go to assemble the combo here. But the scary thing is they've got that Sunbaked Canyon, so we would need to fade 2 draw steps here. Which, I mean, it's not impossible, right? Their deck will have a decent amount of creatures and lands in, so... We didn't find either combo piece, unfortunately, but we can use these Guide of Souls to try and find a Val or a way to get there. We could also consider cracking a food during the upkeep to try and scry towards a Val, because then we still have enough mana to go Guide of Souls, cast Val off the Gilded Goose. But I think that's not great because it doesn't... It then makes Green Sun Zenith not kill next turn, which is pretty big. So we got very lucky this turn, right? They obviously didn't draw an Aura, which is huge for us. So we could consider cracking it in the upkeep, but I'm not sure that's really worth it. Okay, we got Warden here. So now we've got a lot of looks. So I think if we can fade 1 more draw step here, then we've got a very good chance of winning, because we're going to get so many looks here. You know, between the Trelisara... between the Trelisara triggers off Guide of Souls and potentially scries off the Warden here as well. So I think we're just going to bottom anything that isn't Val, Chord of Calling, Zenith, or potentially Okay, I was going to say Night Errant. I think we'll keep that then. Because that then should give us, well, quite a few looks at it. Now, no point in using the Scry on the Warden here, I don't think. Because we already know that we want the card on top. And, okay, so they give her, presumably to knock off the Demonic Ruckus, which then gives them another look at an aura. So we could be in trouble here for sure, but we also do have quite a lot of blockers. Okay, Amped Raptor, please hit another creature. Okay. Shard Mage's Rescue, sure. So, I mean, I still think there's a chance we survive here, and if we do survive here, I think we've got we've got a very good chance of winning next turn because of this Knight Errant. Now, it is worth mentioning that with this specific build of the deck, you need to ensure, especially when you're casting Knight Errant with Guide of Souls and Trelasara, that you have auto-order triggers off so that you can choose whether you want to scry before the Knight Errant if you're looking for a particular card to try and find. Or if you're not in that situation, it's best to look off Knight Errant first and then scry afterwards to try and manipulate your next draw step, if that makes sense. So here, they could have Shard Mage's Rescue, and they can also potentially give the Light Paws protection from white. So I want to make sure that we block with as many creatures as we possibly can here, because we're not beating another Sheltered by Ghost. I'm pretty sure they would have cast it if they had it here. So I think we need to block with every creature that isn't necessary to win off Knight Errant next turn. So we basically need enough mana to be able to go Knight Errant and cast Val in the same turn. So I'm going to block with everything else just so that, you know, if they do get protection from white, we still survive. Maybe this was over the top. I think we're maybe dead to Shard Mage's Rescue regardless. Although, actually, no, they can't really give protection from white because of all the auras on it. But I feel like that, you know, that plays around Shard Mage's Rescue a little bit better. Okay, so now we need to make sure that we order it in a way that... Oh, maybe we're not supposed to tap the Trelasara there, actually. That might be a misplay. Because we could have a really big blocker around otherwise, and I'm not sure this extra mana is really going to be too helpful. Again, we want to make sure Trelasara triggers first, because we want to scry away anything that isn't a Val here. We just want to maximise our chances of finding Val off this Knight Errant. Oh wow, we still don't find it. Yeah, I should have kept Trelasara untapped here. That was a misplay on my part for sure. I mean, to be fair, we're pretty unlucky to not find a Val here. We've had so many looks now. I mean, that's not a bad one to keep on top, but we're getting a lot of scries here, right? So I think we should bottom it. Try and find a more concrete way to guarantee the Val. And then we go Guide of Souls. Yeah, we definitely should have... If we had Trelasara untapped, I think there's a decent chance we survive again next turn. But we are gaining quite a lot of life. And now I am definitely going to set an upkeep stop so that we can crack a food token during the upkeep. Because then Val is a good... Well, Val wins. Green Sun Zenith wins. Chord of Calling also wins. And then we could potentially also win with Knight Errant as well, right? If we scry, see Knight Errant, we could play the Knight Errant and still have enough mana to go for it. Okay, there's the Zenith. Perfect. So now we should be good, right? Well, as in we should be good if they don't have anything here. They can go Luris into Ruckus. Wow, we got very lucky. So we're very lucky to still be in this game. But I also think we're kind of unlucky to have not found a Val yet. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. We might still end up losing here because we didn't keep the Trelasara untapped. I think if we keep Trelasara untapped, they probably can't even attack here with what they've got at the moment. Ah, okay, they got Griff Spoon to give it flying. So, even if we had kept Trelasara untapped, it shouldn't matter. Well, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. So thankfully it looks like we're not going to get punished here. And if they don't have another land here, we should be good to win. Right? So this has been a very weird game where both decks, well, decks from both sides didn't really cooperate. Oh, they did have another land, but it was tapped. Okay. So now we can Zenith for 2. I mean, I'm very surprised we won this one. We can pay the Sentinel tax, but again, it doesn't really matter. And then we can finally get Val out. And that should be it. So managing game 1 against auras is tricky for sure because we just don't have our interaction in. So post sideboard, we definitely need interaction here. So we're going to bring in the fragments, bring in the apparition. Maybe Thalia is worth considering as well because it does slow them down, but I'm not 100% sure on that, to be honest. Yeah, I'm not. We've got quite a few cards to cut. So here I think we're going to cut the Zeniths. And because we're cutting the Zeniths, I'm going to cut the Rubble Belt as well. And then we keep the Convoke side of the deck fully intact. So we've still got the Knight Errant, we've still got the Chord of Calling, we've still got the Rope Line Attendants and stuff. And that enables us to, still be able to dig for the combo, but also have enough interaction in the deck where we can just stop the opponent doing their thing, which then should hopefully just buy us enough time to assemble our own combo as well. And I also do think that... Oh, wow. Wow, okay. Very unlucky mulligans there, but... At least this hand has interaction and some way to get the combo and, some way to ramp as well. And we are on the draw, so our chances of drawing another land before we need it is relatively high, I think. Okay, 2 Fragment Realities is very nice. If I'm not going to draw a land, Fragment's a great one to draw here. But having said that, fragmenting a 2-drop is pretty bad. Think about it, I have been considering swapping out Fragment for just a hard removal spell like a Path to Exile, perhaps, because... the main matchups where I bring it in are auras, wizards, and the mirror, and all of those are decks where you often want to be hitting 2-drops and their 1-drops are pretty high impact. So even though them getting a land out of the deal is pretty bad with Path to Exile, I still think it might be better than Fragment because they get the 1-drop. And then the other reason I started off with Fragment in the sideboard is because... Or the main reason I've been running it so far is that it gives us outs to bigger stuff as well. But I'm not really sure that's as important when we have Insidious Fungus that can take out artifacts and enchantments of any size, and we have Grist that can take out creatures of any size. So attacking with the Hushbringer here, I mean, Hushbringer is a bit of an issue, but we have Warden that can win through it, and we have Chord of Calling to get it. So, I mean, ideally here we draw Trelisara. Okay, Grist isn't that great here, but we can attack and then pass with Chord up, Chord for Warden, and then Trelisara just wins us the game, as does Chord off the top. Actually, no, Chord doesn't work because we still need 3 permanents untapped for Warden to win the game. I guess we've also still got this food token as well, right? So if we draw another land instead of the Grist, we could have gone Chord of Calling for Trelisara and then just crack the food token to win. But in this situation, I think we have to go for Warden and then just hope to draw either a Val or another Chord of Calling for the win. But yeah, the fact that this can... Oh, is it frozen? Okay, good. I was worried... Sorry, I was worried I have to reboot the client then. I've had that happen a couple of times recently. So they attack in. I'm not going to block with the Gilded Goose this time because I don't want to lose it to a Shard Mage's Rescue. And there's no real benefit baiting out Shard Mage's Rescue here while they have Giver in play. So Chord for 1, get Warden, and then I think we just got to hope to draw Trelisara here. Because it looks like they have Shard Mages up. Yikes, okay. I mean, we can start scrying here, but that might just leave us too vulnerable to this Spirit Dance. So, right, it doesn't have Trample or Flying yet, so we can just chump block it. So I think we're just going to start plussing with the Grist here. Get more blockers in play. If they don't find a way to give Spirit Dancer Trample or Flying here, we can just chump block it every turn, which should again hopefully buy us some time to get Trelisara, or eventually we might get to a point where Chord can win us the game here, right? If we have enough permanents in play to both Chord and activate Warden in the same turn. But there is Demonic Ruckus. To be fair, I'd be quite happy if they attack down Grist here, because it's a lot of redirected damage going elsewhere. Okay, they go face, so... which is probably the correct play from the opponent, to be fair. I'm kind of surprised they don't attack with the Hushbringer as well. Okay. I think we're just dead here, right? I was going to say, we needed to draw Trelisara, or... I don't even think Chord gets it done here. So I'll attack with the Val in the hopes that they might make a mistake and block with the Hushbringer, give it protection to soak up some damage, and then that will allow us to use Grist to kill the Spirit Dancer. So I think we'll have to just take out the Giver here and then hope to survive another turn. Although, to be fair, I think even if they have absolutely nothing in hand, we still probably lose most of our board trying to block this Spirit Dancer, which doesn't give us any outs to combo the following turns. So maybe we're supposed to just use Grist to target the Spirit Dancer and hope they misclick or something. But yeah, we're probably going to be losing this one. But we at least gave ourselves a couple of draw steps to find Trelisara. You know, you've got to play to your outs in this situation. And like I said a few times, the nice thing about this deck is you have a lot of outs. Okay, yeah, definitely dead here. But going into game 3 big on the play. And also, I do feel like Auras is just a much better matchup post-sideboard because you get access to interaction. And if you can keep their creatures off the board or keep them off their 2-drops especially, then your board presence can just slow down their regular creatures and it just buys you enough time to set up your game plan. Okay, this is sick, right? We've got Rope Line, plus we've potentially got the turn 3 win here as well. We've got Guide of Souls into Trelisara, into Val. Obviously, if they have Hushbringer, that's a little bit awkward. And in that instance, it would be really nice to have a Warden here instead, but then you're not guaranteed to find a third land because you don't get the Scry off the Trelisara here. So Demonic Ruckus is tricky because if they have Light Pause, they can obviously exile the Trelisara, and we don't have a great way to find a second one. But if they have a Spirit Dancer here, then we're great. If they have Hushbringer, then that's a little bit awkward, but we can at least kill it with Grist. So Light Pause would be the difficult thing here, because it would give Ward 2. We wouldn't have a good way to kill it. But now, okay, sweet. We should just win here then, right? Another turn 3 kill. Yeah, sweet. We got there. Nice. Okay, so we're on the play here. And yeah, this hand looks great, right? We've got Rope. I mean, we could lead on Gilded Goose on turn 1, but I actually think I'm going to wait because, you know, with 2 Convoke cards, if you wait until Rope Line to get an extra token on it, then your Gilded Goose and your other 1-mana creatures actually help accelerate into your Convoke cards. So I think with this hand, I'm probably going to, you know, hold on to the Gilded Goose. Not drawing another creature there is pretty rough. Or rather, drawing a land rather than a non-land there is pretty rough. But if we draw another creature, that could have enabled some even more broken turns next turn. But yeah, next turn I think probably just Gilded Goose into Knight Errant. And then, you know, if we can find a Trelisara or a Val, then we can hopefully cord for the other piece. And then hopefully we can find an enabler off the Knight Errant as well. So run out the Goose here. So opponents on a pretty fast start. They could have Kozilek's Command up here, which is pretty scary. So we'll definitely take the opportunity to get the Knight Errant down before they remove one of our other creatures. And now we get a token, and hopefully we can dig to an Enabler and Val. Okay, perfect. So I think we prefer Guide of Souls to Warden because we're potentially going to be using Cord to find another piece here. And the nice thing about this is we now have multiple options to combo off, right? And we can potentially combo off at instant speed as well, which is nice. So if they do pass with interaction up, whether that's, you know, Kozilek's Command, or I've seen some people running Warping Well more recently, then we can hopefully win in response to that. We'll see what they do. If they tap out here, we should just be good. Okay. So they pass with 4 mana open, so that is almost certainly going to be a Kozilek's Command, but we can play around it to a certain extent, right? We can go Guide of Souls into Val, pass to the end step, and then I'm pretty happy if they just don't do anything. They've just kind of wasted their last turn. So I'm going to wait till the end step. Hopefully they'll fire off K Command. Or it looks like they're considering doing it now, which would also be great, right? Yeah, okay, so they do it now. So now we can just Cord in response for the win here. So Cord coming in clutch. So I want to manually tap here just so that we have attackers available. I mean, I don't think there's anything they can have that would save them here, really, but always best to play a little bit more carefully if you can afford to. Okay, so we got the win there, which is nice. Now we can cut the rope lines for the White Orchid Phantom, which does make Cord worse, but I like bringing in Liberator as a way to kill Torpor and Chalice, and then depending on the build they've got, I either like bring in Aven Interrupter or Skyclave Apparition. Aven Interrupter is more if they have sweepers, so if they're running red with Kozilek's Return, I think is the name of it, then I like Aven Interrupter as a way to defend the board. If they're running a more aggressive build with Line Breaker and Flesh Raker, then I like Apparition. And if they're not running either of those, which the opponent might not be here, then it's sometimes best to keep in the third chord, although without Rope Line that does become quite a bit worse. Or you could consider Sylvan Safekeeper if you're worried about spot removal as well. But this hand, I mean, we don't have a clear path to the combo, but White Orchid Phantom is really difficult for them to play through, and we have a pretty decent, just generic Convoke start here. Okay, so they play a Forest and a Shifting Woodland Hearth, so we don't actually have any good targets for the White Orchid Phantom yet, but we can just go Liberator into Warden here, and then I presume they'll play a Soul Land next turn, right? Or their start's really slow, in which case that's great for us anyway. And then if they do, we can go White Orchid Phantom into Knight Errant here, which, you know, hopefully slows them down and gets us a lot of, you know, pressure on board. Oh yeah, Dismember. Yeah, so again, if the opponent's not playing sweepers or a more aggro build, then it is probably correct to bring in Safekeeper. So I probably sideboarded slightly wrong here. I think I'm supposed to go Safekeeper in instead of Aven Interrupter here. And then we get Guide of Souls and White Orchid Phantom. Okay, opponent missing their third land is obviously huge for us, but even if they had the third land, we kind of had the answer already, right? We've been holding on to these White Orchid Phantoms for a while now. So this does look like a hand where we're probably not gonna combo. Although again, if we draw another Zenith, another Chord, or either of the combo pieces, we can just win here potentially, right? We can go, say we drew Tralasara, we can just go Guide Tralasara, Chord for the win. So now we're definitely gonna use the opportunity to get our White Orchid Phantom down. And to be honest, I think I'm probably supposed to Chord for Tralasara here, right? Because if we do, then we get to scry and try and look for, a Val, another Knight Errant, another Chord, or a Zenith, does it? So we've got quite a few looks here, and we can still attack with the 4/4. I mean, we don't really have great attacks outside of the 4/4 anyway, so we're not really losing out on anything, keeping these creatures untapped to use with Chord, if that makes sense. So I feel pretty good about this spot. Obviously, the opponent missing a third land did help us somewhat, but again, I don't think it would have mattered too much because we had the White Orchid Phantom ready to go. Okay, so there's Sowing Micah Spawn. Presume that will get another Eldrazi Temple, or potentially a Labyrinth if they've got non-Eldrazi they want to cast. Okay, they do go for a Temple, and now we can Chord for Tralasara, get a Scry, and then hopefully find, like I said, a Val, a Chord, a Zenith, or a Knight Errant would also help find it. Okay, scry away a land for sure. And we don't find it, but we do have this backup White Orchid Phantom to take out the Eldrazi Temple just to keep them off that, their top end. And that also gives us another scry of the Tralasara to try and find top end. Interrupter's interesting. Do we want that? I mean, we're cutting them down to, 4 mana next turn. I mean, the awkward thing with Interrupter in this matchup is a lot of their top end has cast triggers as well. But if it's like, I feel like the only way they're getting back into this game here is with Ugin the Spirit Dragon or, what's the name of it? Sire of Seven Deaths. And Aven Interrupter is great against both of those, so I think I like keeping the Interrupter, but honestly, since they're not running sweepers, it's probably best to have Safekeeper in against this sort of build. But yeah, we got there nice.